Okay, Oscar fans, we have a new expert at Gold Derby, Alicia Malone from Turner Classic Movies and Filmstruck and a lot of other places. She joins us to talk about Oscars today with a veteran from Gold Derby, Keith Simanton from IMDb, who, by the way, is one of the most accurate of all the experts. So, Alicia, this is the guy we have to take down today. Are you ready?
Yeah, this is the guy I'm gunning for. I love you, Keith, but watch yourself because I'm going to come for you this year.
That's the spirit. All right. What do you say, Keith?
I am looking for the Oscar shiv in my back at any moment.
Two of them. One for me and one from Alicia. Well, let's start with you. What movies can win Best Picture? Let's start out from there.
Sorry, that was for me.
Yeah. What pictures can win?
Well, the film that I'm really excited for is one of my favorites of the year, and that's Roma. And I know there's some conjecture about whether it could be just in the foreign category or in the Best Picture. But, you know, Netflix, they've got their awards consultant there. They're really pushing it. They're doing a lot of screenings, a lot of Q&As. So that's the one that I'm really gunning for in the Best Picture category. And I'm really hopeful that it gets there and it also gets Best Director, et cetera, because it's such a beautiful film. And even though there's not a word of English, I don't think that should stop it from being in the Best Picture category.
Keith, what do you say about all that? Star is Born is leading among the experts. Roma was out front up till about a week ago, but now the collective view of us experts is Star is Born out front. That's what you currently have out front now.
That is what I currently have up front. And however, I would have to concur with Alicia, not that I'm giving any ground here at all. I have to concur with Alicia. I think it gets nominated for a ton of awards. Maybe, well, it'll be. I think it'll be tied with one or two other films for the most awards, and win a bunch of significant ones. Which I won't tell you which one.
Well, what's your case for A Star Is Born winning then over the competition? Because there used to be this jinx we talked about, all of us Oscarologists, about the bizarre trend that movies about Hollywood don't tend to win Hollywood's top award, Best Picture, at the Oscars, although The Artist did win, but then La La Land lost after we thought it was going to win. And answer that. So,
but I would say, well, first of all, it's not really about Hollywood. It's about the music industry. And much like Birdman, which wasn't really about Hollywood, but was about, you know, being an actor and the pressures of stardom and what it's like to be a public figure. Those are very much in play. And it's also a very, very popular film. People love this film. And I think reasonably so. I have to say, when I saw it in Venice, I thought for 3/4 of it, I went, oh my gosh, not only is this going to be my favorite film of the year, this might be up in my top films, like in a very, you know, a long list, but of maybe all time. And then I think the last quarter of it flags significantly, so it's not there. But I certainly understand the overwhelming adoration of this movie, and I think Bradley Cooper deserves all, and Gaga deserve all the accolades they can get, which they're going to.
But Alicia, you know, from the industry vibe that we're all getting, that Green Book is a serious threat, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, A Star is Born is such a crowd pleaser. Everybody's enjoying that film, but so is everybody enjoying Green Book. You know, I saw this movie at Toronto and it won the Toronto Audience Award, which is often a good indicator for the Oscars. And it's just it's a feel-good movie, even though it deals with a lot of tough issues of racism. But in the end, it's quite inspiring. These two unlikely friends that end up in this car together, Viggo Mortensen and Mahershala Ali, are so brilliant in their roles. And it's just a film that plays really well across the board. So I think that is a serious contender, particularly in this world we're living in, where we're talking about a lot of divisions between people. It is really nice to see a film that brings people together. And it just played here at the AFI Festival in LA. And again, it got rapturous applause and everybody was loving it. So I think that is definitely a film to look out for Best Picture.
Keith, you're usually the one who goes out for long shots at this point in the Derby, at Gold Derby. I'm doing it this year. I've got Green Book in my #1 slot for Best Picture. It can happen, can't it?
Well, when we were talking about the films that I think are going to be the most nominated, I think it's Green Book and Roma and A Star Is Born. I think those are the three that are the front contenders, and all for very different reasons, which is, I think, really lovely. And I adore Green Book, so it's, I certainly concur. And the Toronto Audience Award is a huge indicator. It's been it's certainly presaged a lot in the past, although it's not
like Slumdog Millionaire and all that. But last year it went for 3 billboards, and I went for 3 billboards at the Oscars and got stung. Ouch!
Yeah. I don't even want to talk about what I did last year. It wasn't me. It was fake Gold Derby. I don't know. Somebody impersonated me. I went a little astray last year, and I had 3 billboards at one point. Let's not talk about last year.
Okay, let's not. It wasn't
but I think this year, Green Book, one of the ones that I think is really fascinating, just looking at the stacked rank of best directors, is, can Peter Farrelly sneak in there? I don't know.
I know. But Best Picture and Director don't line up anymore because we have different kinds of voting systems. So maybe it's okay that someone else wins Director, maybe even Spike Lee, if not Cuarón, and Best Picture goes its own way, as it's been tending to do. Right?
Yes. Yeah. That used to have to be lockstep, and it hasn't been for quite a while.
Yeah. The Favorite is one of my favorite movies of the year. Alicia, that could sweep up tons of critics awards. The critics awards are going to be like The Favorite versus Roma, right? At least at this stage, unless something like Cold War sneaks in or something.
Yeah, absolutely. The Favorite is definitely one of my favorites of the year. Of course, it's going to be quite divisive amongst audiences and maybe amongst Academy members, because it's got a lot of subversive humor, a lot of shocking moments as well. So it might not play to the general Academy crowd as well as it will for the critics groups. But I'm really hoping that it gets a lot of awards. I think definitely when it comes to the acting categories, you've got this trio of 3 incredible.
Let's sort out the trio for us then. Who's possible? Who's out front among those supporting stars, and can Olivia take down Gaga?
Yeah, well, I think she can. It was interesting at Telluride once they played The Favorite, and then hearing whether the studio was going to push, like who they were going to push for lead and who they were going to push for supporting, because they're pretty much even roles. And I would even say that Emma Stone is the lead character because that's the one that you follow throughout the film. But they've decided to push Olivia Colman for lead, and then both Rachel Weisz and Emma Stone for the supporting roles. And I think Olivia Colman, she's someone that we've seen in so many films, so many TV shows. She's always been great, but here she really gets to shine because she plays this very petulant character who is given to tantrums, and then she's funny one second, and then you feel for her character as well at the end. You feel that she's gone through an emotional journey. She has no one to love. So I think that she is one to look out for when it comes to Best Actress. And
look out for who wins. So Glenn Close, one more loss, and she has broken free of Deborah Carr and Thelma Ritter, and now owns the dubious title as biggest loser among actresses in Oscar history. So there's a lot of sentiment behind her finally winning, and Gaga and Olivia. So make it a certain prediction here, Alicia. Who wins?
Okay. I think in that case, I think I'm going to go with Glenn Close. I mean, it is a great performance in The Wife, but I think the bigger story of the fact that she hasn't won before and she's had such a wonderful career, I think that will end up propelling her. She's liked by a lot of Academy members. I think both women are wonderful, but I'm going to right now put my money on Glenn Close.
So we'll refer to that as the Still Alice Award.
I know, yes. I know. That's exactly what I was thinking.
But exactly. It's really possible, which is really possible. Boy, I don't know. I think I don't know. I think it's going to be hard to, once Lady Gaga gets out there, to suppress that. Matter of fact, I have to amend my other statement because looking at my noms, I have Yorgos Lanthimos for director. I have favorite for, for best picture. I have Olivia Colman as best actress, and obviously Bison Stone. And I actually think it's the best screenplay, original screenplay of the year. It's the most quotable. It's definitely the most quotable. I don't know if it's the best screenplay of the year, but it's certainly the most quotable.
Yes.
And so I've got to include that in the most nominated with the other three. And boy, I'd love to see Olivia Colman win, but I don't think she's going to.
But I like that sentiment, that little voice inside of you that said, "Yeah, I'd love to see her." I think that's inside of a lot of people because you're up against this idea of Oscar and Lady Gaga, which seems a bit preposterous just on the face of it. A lot of us were very skeptical before seeing the movie. Now that we've seen it, she delivers. She deserves the Oscars, yes, but she's still Gaga. And Olivia Colman gives that performance. That's what these Oscar voters have shown one trend in recent years, and that's real snob appeal. And that's not Gaga. That's more Colman, right? Or even.
And that certainly gets you to the dance. I mean, I think about Phantom Thread last year, which just kind of, dropped at the end of the year and surprised, I think, many people by the amount of nominations that it got because it was very much flying under the radar. Yet it didn't go any further than that. And I think it got blanked, except for costume. That, it didn't win anything outside of those nominations. I don't know. I think the favorite is much more approachable than Phantom Thread by a good stretch. But I'm not sure if it just gets it to the noms and doesn't carry it home.
Alicia, could you see a path for Black Panther suddenly taking off? We have a crowded field this year. We have several movies that can win. We don't have one movie out front like The Artist that year, or 12 Years a Slave, or something that just couldn't be taken down, or Titanic, or American Beauty. There are those years where a front runner stays out front and doesn't stumble. But this year it's all over the place, and that means something weird could happen, right? Remember the year of Mad Max Fury Road? It won all those critics awards just because they were trying to be defiant and show that we can vote for the commercial movie too. Is there a path for that possibility?
Possibly. It's difficult right now. I have it in my overall nominations for Best Picture, but I think once we start getting more steam behind things like Vice and other movies that are starting to get traction and being seen by more critics and more Academy voters, that will slowly kind of push Black Panther out. I think it's a great film. It's definitely a film that we needed culturally, but it's just hard when it's competing with so many of these very unique original films. I think, definitely if they had the Popular Film Award, if that went ahead, then you'd see Black Panther in there for sure. But I'm hopeful for Black Panther when it comes to things like costumes and sound mixing and editing. I think that's where we'll get to see more award nominations for that movie.
Yeah, but Alicia, when you get the email that today at 4 p.m., the New York Film Critics Circle voted Black Panther Best Picture, surprise, surprise, you might change your mind, right? If that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that would be interesting.
They went for Lord of the Rings and stuff. I mean, they went for they go for commercial stuff sometimes.
I'll tell you what I would love to see. I would love to see Ryan Coogler nominated for Best Director. I mean, you think about Fruitvale Station and Creed and then Black Panther, all very different films. And someone who, clearly has this vision and, just a passion behind those films, behind all of them. I'd love to see Coogler get nominated. And I think the film gets nominated too. I mean, Disney's got to do something with all that money.
I know.
Let's buy it. Nothing.
They are pushing it.
All right, so who wins? Keith, I believe you're the one who's got the very daring. Is it among the two of you? Do you have Bradley Cooper in last place of your 5 nominees for Best Actor?
No, if I remember, and I fiddled around with it recently. So,
but who do you have out front for actor?
For actor, I may be alone on this one.
Oh, you got Rami Malek. Yeah,
I've got Rami Malek, and I had not changed it. I recognize that it got cold comfort from critics, but it got a very it's got a very hearty audience.
94% on Rotten Tomatoes audience score. Come on,
Yeah.
This is where the critics, they were gunning for that movie. I'm really ticked off about this because I loved Bohemian Rhapsody, and I think Rami is amazing in it. And I just sitting there on the Fox lot at that Zanuck Theater the night they showed it to all of us for the first time, you could just hear the cynics in the audience. Oh, this isn't going to be any good. They just didn't want to like it.
You could hear them sharpening their knives.
Yeah, they were. But
Alicia, I think, was one of those people.
Yeah, no, I wasn't. I really enjoyed the film, but I think the best thing in the film is Rami Malek. So I put him in my mix, but not to win. But I think for my winner, I've got Viggo Mortensen, but I'm now thinking it should probably be someone like Christian Bale, because again, it's that transformation performance with him playing Dick Cheney in Vice, shaving those eyebrows, putting on the weight. You know, he does such a good job as always. But Viggo, I think, is really strong.
But yeah, and I think he's my number 2, and not having it be able to compare right now. I'm pretty sure he's my number 2, and and you want to talk about a transformation. You talk about this guy, not just the Lord of the Rings series, but Far From Men or Captain Fantastic. That's a role. That is a whole cloth. And if you've met any of the the kids of Tony Lip.
Yeah. I have, yes. The son.
He's picked it up. It's one. Both he and Mahershala Ali, I think, are both nominated. I think those are out of those 10 best supporting and best actor. Those are 2 boxes they're not available.
Yeah, but I even think Mahershala is going to win supporting actor. That's where I stand right now. That movie is just really getting huge traction in the industry and among voters right now. There's this real momentum for it, even though people like Alicia did see it at Toronto. I missed the screening in Toronto. I had accepted and then gotten the wrong line or whatever I had done at Roy Thompson Hall to screw it all up. But
yeah, Mahershala.
Current momentum, Green Book has it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the feeling I got when we walked out of that screening at Toronto. I remember a lot of people just tweeting straight away, Mahershala Ali has got another Oscar, because he's just so remarkable once again.
I would say he's got one. Well, he's got several, but he's got one particular big challenge.
What's that?
Timothy Chalamet for Beautiful Boy.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Full disclosure, IMDb's owned by Amazon. It's an Amazon Studios. That has nothing to do with this.
Give us your Timothée argument here.
I think you've got one of the things that the Academy also likes, which is, you could say ingenue or the rising star.
Right, that's true.
The Adrian Brody kind of, oh my gosh, we love you. You're so good. Let's. I mean, he's nominated last year, and it was also good in Lady Bird last year, as well as Call Me by Your Name. And he does a very, very different role here. I think that's very compelling competition for Mahershala. And I love it.
And there were a lot of people who thought that Chalamet could have even won last year. He had that momentum. It was hard to take down Gary Oldman. But
yeah. That was Gary Oldman's year. That was his Still Alice.
Yeah, I know, but still there was this real Timothée thing going on, and it could happen this year, right?
It's also fascinating because there's a number that I still haven't seen yet. For example, I haven't seen Vice yet.
Right.
And it could do The Big Short kind of momentum, which obviously hit the runway, really fast. I haven't, The Mule, good old Warner Brothers is, getting a Clint Eastwood movie in, much as they have snuck in before.
$1 Million Baby, a December release, last minute release. Yeah.
Gran Torino, same thing.
Right.
And then, and I haven't seen Mary Queen of Scots yet.
No, me
I haven't
neither.
seen that either. Or Mary Poppins, I haven't seen yet either.
I don't. But hey, I mean, you're right, because the original was an Oscar winner up and down the board. So I guess that's possible.
Yeah, it's possible. Alicia, how do you normally do on, this is your first year at Gold Derby, how do you normally do with your predictions?
Pretty terrible, actually.
You're fired. Why did I ever ask you to
Once
join?
or twice, I won some people on Twitter some money because I my predictions, on Twitter, and I had people being like, "Yeah," and so I'm really up and down. So some years I nail it, other years I don't. The last 2 years I haven't done so well, but this year I'm going to take it very seriously. I'm studying the form. I'm going to keep changing probably to the last minute. But
keep changing, because changing is good. Both of you need to update, by the way. The more often we update, the more it changes the odds and gives a real sense of a race, and basically gives more heart attacks to all of our studio bosses. There's one studio boss who has won Best Picture a lot lately, who told me recently that she, and you can probably figure out who I'm talking about, looks at the Gold Derby odds 10 times a day. I'm sure that's a slight exaggeration, but it's fun striking terror in their hearts over there. What's your philosophy, Keith? Because what I've noticed about your pattern is early on, you like to do a little advocacy, a little cheerleading if you like something, and that's okay. But then as you get closer to the actual locking these things down, you don't play any games. You go for the
I go for the jugular. Yes, I do. No, it's what I think is really exciting about, Tom, what you've started and what Gold Derby can do is put people out there that people go, oh yeah, that was a good performance. I really like that. I really enjoy that aspect of it. And so early on, like I'm a big fan of the Sisters Brothers, and I would have loved to. I'd still love to see John C. Reilly get nominated.
I know, he's great.
And Joaquin Phoenix is fantastic, and I love that film. It's one of my favorite films of the year. It's not going to go anywhere, but but I'd sure love it if it did. For gosh sakes, darn it!
Well, it's always the thing. It's like you want to put people in just because you love the film and you really believe in it, and then you have this war within yourself of being like, well, this is not going to win, so I have to take it out, but it hurts.
And not to mention, we also have the conundrum when we start that there are films like you go, wow, that seems like when that drops, that's Vice is a good example for me not having seen it. It's like, oh well, The Post last year. At the beginning of September, it was, you look at those leaderboards, it was post, and then everybody saw it.
Yeah.
and then it got nominated for Best Picture too, remember? And then a lot of people, it did hold on a little bit after everybody saw it. It just was just too familiar, I think. I don't think it was a reflection so much on the movie as they're looking for something different. These Oscar voters aren't like the old days where they just went for the big epic. Now they want something a little offbeat. They want a Moonlight. They want a Hurt Locker. They want to make a statement, right?
Yeah, and that's what makes it really exciting too, to be part of Gold Derby and get to predict these things, because with the changing makeup of the Academy members, I think it gets harder to predict. But that's what makes it fun and really exciting, when it's not a slam dunk all the way through, when you're still changing your mind right up to the end.
And they are certainly fooling us, those voters, more and more, aren't they, Keith? A lot of voters that I spoke to never saw 12 Years a Slave or Moonlight. That didn't, or Still Alice. That didn't stop them from voting for it. I remember one very, very famous Oscar voter, who we all know very well, I'll tell you after the webcam who it is, who had said to me, I'm not even going to watch Still Alice, but I'm still going to vote for Julianne Moore. I mean, I remember Peggy in New York, Siegel, saying to me at some of her lunches the year of 12 Years a Slave. And of course, she's famous for having all of these sit down, very fancy Oscar lunches with a lot of Academy members there, and members of the filmmakers in attendance in New York City. And she had said throughout the 12 Years a Slave year to me, she kept saying, Tom, I don't think I've still met an Academy member who has seen the movie. But that doesn't matter.
It's so crazy.
And that does complicate things.
Well, they're voting for
at some point, you know, particularly one of the things that's kind of intriguing for journalists and for people that are in guilds and academy is you get this onslaught of review links or discs that come in. And what I, you know, always wonder about, and this doesn't, you got to counter these two, is that when I'm sitting there with my lovely wife, Teresa, and I'm like, hey, honey, want to watch the Holocaust film? No, I mean, again, she has very, you know, wide ranging tastes as well. But, you know, everyone's had a hard week. Do you want to watch 12 Years a Slave? Now, I'd obviously seen it beforehand, but I get that a lot, which a lot of people are like, yeah, I didn't see it. However, I think I'm supposed to vote for it. And that's what complicates things. And then you kind of have to go for, all right, then what's the zeitgeist? And this is really where what a lot of those awards whisperers, where they come in, where those guys, and I mean guys in a just a general,
actually women, right?
Because it's obviously guys and gals, where they come in, and it's frankly, it defines what can happen, because people think they're supposed to vote for something, so they do.
Yeah, they hear the buzz, and that's, you know, created by all of us with our predictions and talking about films as we do. And then I think that infects people with the idea of what's meant to be, you know, getting awards that year.
In the political climate, and I don't just mean politics, more the zeitgeist and social climate is, for example, I misjudged the social climate last year and went in a direction that I thought was going to be much more Me Too, because it was certainly of not only the moment, but of great import, than it turned out being. And that surprised me last year. For example, I had Get Out as Best Picture. I still think Get Out.
Well, that could have happened. I believe that could have happened. That was really in the race, and it was a three-way race with Three Billboards and Shape of Water. I didn't believe the Shape of Water thing
until it happened.
Until it happened, right? And then because remember, Three Billboards had won the Globe, Three Billboards had won the Audience Award at TIFF, Three Billboards had won BAFTA, and it was, how could it win BAFTA? This movie about, you know, that takes place in Donald Trump's America. It was just so, well, it was McDonough, of course, who's from the UK, but
you know, or I know I didn't do this, but Greta Gerwig nominated, one of only 5 female directors ever nominated in the history of the Academy Awards.
Insane.
It was a, I wouldn't want to call it a watershed year, because it turned out not to be one, and I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I thought it would have been really exciting to see Greta Gerwig win, Rachel Morrison win, and just have that whole story.
Rachel Morrison's another great example of someone.
Yeah.
Sorry to
only female cinematographer in the history of the Oscars to be nominated. And it speaks to, I mean, hopefully things will change again with the changing guard of the Academy members, that then you'll start to see more of this. But yeah,
it doesn't mean that it was wrong. It just means that that's what they did.
It's always been the way.
Yeah. Tom, you're being very quiet.
Well, there's only one. I know we're really discussing something really, really important here, and that is there's really been only one case historically in show business, Hollywood history, where all of these awards said, yes, there is a Best Picture, and it is X. In other words, the Golden Globe, the Guild Awards, the Critics Awards, all agreed on one movie, and it was Schindler's List. It's the only time it's ever happened. And that year, it was a different movie that won the People's Choice Awards. Because in other words, if you define the argument I'm making here, the scenario as, all right, all the media people finally decided there was a Best Picture, and the rest of America said, no, it's this other Spielberg movie called Jurassic Park that was the best movie of the year. So, you know, it's kind of fun that this thing we're in pursuit of doesn't exist. But yet, on the other hand, the Oscars are predictable. You know, Cynthia Swartz, one of the greatest, of course, Oscar consultants, one year, one of her movies won Best Picture, and I was sitting with her in her office in New York, griping and go, you know, that never should have won Best Picture. I won't say which one. Oh God, it was a stupid movie. And the consultant for the film turned to me and she said, I know. And I said, oh, well, why did it win? How did it win if it just didn't deserve it? And she said, Tom, they all just want to be on the winning team. It's my job to create the narrative and to, you know, to get those early wins, and then the momentum carries itself. Sometimes if you're out too early, like La La Land, for example, I think that was part of it. I think if it had crested later, it might have fended off the Moonlight attack. But yeah, it's all about momentum. You know, at Gold Derby, Alicia, you're new to us now, but one of the most hilariously ridiculous things about the website is that we start predicting the Oscars, the experts do, and the fans in mid-August, right? We try to get that first batch out there before the film festivals. Do you know that we are generally right 50% of the time with those 4 acting awards? We normally get 2 of them right in August, in some cases before we've even seen it. In a way, it's ridiculous, because in many cases, we're predicting Best Picture and some of the top acting awards before we've even seen them. But in a way, it's that predictable, but it's also not predictable, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because you can look at actors and look at them for their story, like Glenn Close, for example, or look at their previous history, like Mahershala Ali, and then start to predict based on that and look at the film that they're in. So it is really interesting. I like that when it's not predictable, but I think that's fascinating that you can look that far ahead and generally be right.
Yeah, that's why we're going to start the 2020 Gold Derby
right now. Yeah.
Right now,
and we'll probably be more accurate early on in the race than we are when we double, triple guess these winners closer to the actual ceremony date.
That's the thing, when you change your mind so many times and then you should have gone with your original choice. It's always frustrating.
Keith, you always have a movie or two that you're rooting for. What would those films be this year? The ones you just really, really love and just want to win.
Well, I've already talked about The Sisters Brothers, which
yeah, that's a good one.
I sure like Green Book. It's really lovely. I think I really think it's A Star Is Born's year. I will be honest, and this is blasphemy and apostasy, but Roma is very slow.
Yes, it is.
And it's some of the most indelible images of the year by far. There's a wall with dogs' heads, and there's so many moments. The end, the surf. There's so many beautiful, gorgeous moments. It feels like a foreign film, winner. It's Cuarón, obviously, and I hope, and I have him as best director, winning best director. But that's a film that it will be fascinating to watch as it goes. It's a film that I do love. It'll be in my top 10. But the movie I'm rooting for has already been counted out.
Which one? Oh, Sisters Brothers. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. What about you? What movies? Obviously, you're a big Roma fan. Given how you were describing it earlier, Alicia. What else?
Yeah, such a big Roma fan. And it's interesting when I start to look at my favorite films that I've seen so far this year, most of them are foreign. So Roma's right up the top. Cold War and Shoplifters are some of my two of my favorites of the year, and definitely see them doing well in the foreign language category. I really, really hope Roma gets awards in the general categories because I think it definitely deserves it. Cinematography, I mean, it's incredible to see, and hopefully people see it on the big screen and not at home in their little Netflix, TV or laptop or whatever they watch it on. And then the favorite really is just has my heart. But as far as like an outsider that doesn't have a chance, but I still would love to see get something that's First Reformed. That movie really blew me away, and Ethan Hawke's performance did, absolutely. So I still have him in like my number 5 of Best Actor. I don't think it's going to happen, but that's my.
It could happen. There's a very, very aggressive campaign for that. It's A24, the little studio of Moonlight, of course. Don't underestimate their movies.
No, made A24.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was.
I'll tell you one that I've still got, and I know that there's no chance, and it's stupid advocacy, but I'm doing it, which is I've got Nicholas Hoult for Best Supporting Actor for The Favorite because
He's so good.
wonderful in that movie.
So funny.
So one and again, very against type, very different than anything.
High heels, wig, yeah.
But also that preening arrogance in Yorgos Lanthimos' films are always about like these arbitrary set of rules that get set on us, and we don't know why, but we have to do them. And here's this perfect example. It's the monarchy, and how this system around it just gets perverted, twisted, distorted into something you never think it would be. And Nicholas Hoult does one of those echoes of just how crazed this world is, and he's so good. I'd love to see him get nominated. So there's one, Tom.
Yeah, I love The Favorite. My guilty pleasure movies are The Widows. I just love The Widows.
Absolutely.
God, it's such a good movie.
Yeah, it's so much fun.
If I may, to me, that is the mark of Steve McQueen as a great director.
Yes, I agree.
Because to me, William Wyler, Howard Hawks, Raoul Walsh, all these guys made their own films, but when they had to go make some genre film, they made something different and great. And Steve McQueen's done that with the Heist movie, a little twist on the Heist movie, but he's made such a great film. That is also in my best picture slot. I'd love to see Widows get nominated.
I think there are a lot of people like you and me, Keith, who really, really, yes, it is a heist movie, a genre film, but look, The Departed was too, and that won Best Picture. And Viola gives an Academy-worthy performance in a heist movie. She's really, really powerful in this, right, Alicia?
Yes, she is, and all the women are wonderful in these roles. You have Elizabeth Debicki, who's Australian, and she plays this very abused wife, and she has so many layers to her. I think that's what I loved about, like you were saying, Keith, when you get a director such as Steve McQueen in a genre, then you get something that is completely different, and it has a lot more going on than just your typical tropes.
I have Elizabeth Debicki as Best Supporting.
I noticed that, yes.
Until I'm forced to not have her. But I love to see that. Gosh, I'd love to see. And she's been so good in such slight roles. Like even like The Man from U.N.C.L.E. She's the bad guy in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. She's so good. I really like her, and the night manager. She's so good in that. Yeah, I'd love to see that happen. Plus, she's Australian.
Yeah, come on, Aussies.
What final thoughts do you have, Alicia, about this Oscar year? I love the fact that there are movies that very often, I hate to say this, that I just don't like the Oscar movies, or I'm not really, really excited about them. But this year, I love, like you guys do, Roma and Green Book and Star is Born and The Favorite, and I love Bohemian Rhapsody, screw the critics, and Widows. It's just I'm really into this year, and I can't believe that there's finally a year where I like the stuff that's seriously in the race to win. What about you?
Yeah, me too. I'm really excited about this year. There's not your typical quote unquote Oscar bait movies. I think they all subvert what they're trying to do in interesting ways. Even something like First Man, I've got my rocket ship top or sweater on, but even that gives you something different than you might expect from your standard space story movie. It's an interesting biopic. I love the sound design on that film. You have Roma, The Favorite, Green Book. You've got such wonderful movies. So it's a great time to be talking about these films. And I'm really excited to see what happens over the next few months.
So first of all, Alicia, God bless you for bringing up First Man, and shame on me for not. It's so intriguing what Damien Chazelle and Gosling have done, which is, if there's anyone who could have made a, emotional, sweeping, film of space and we're on the moon. None of that. It's a very shirt sleeves up, nose to the grindstone film about a generation that got us to the moon. And it is, and particularly that individual, Neil Armstrong. And I've heard so many stories since about, really although he seems like he was, inordinately closed off, which he was in many ways. They've nailed that character. It's one of them, I think, the integrity of that film. Justin Hurwitz's score, I'd love to see it get nominated for a bunch of things as well. And then there's one group that I feel the most sorry for, and that is the group in the Academy that's got to do the documentaries this year. Because I can't recall a year that's had this many great films. Three Identical Strangers, Minding the Gap, which is, I don't know if you've seen that. It's a skater movie, shot over 12 years, which I thought, well, that's the last thing I want to watch.
It worked for Boyhood.
Well, by the end of this thing, it's just a brilliantly edited shot film by first-time director. There's so many.
Yeah, Won't You Be My Neighbor? So beautiful. Free Solo as well.
Free Solo, and gasp-inducing. Cinematography in that thing is just brilliant. So I think there's so many fantastic docs this year. It's just I feel sorry for that AMPAS group.
Yeah.
Okay, now that we've talked ourselves out of our own predictions here, because that's what happens when we have groupthink like this. We go, we second guess everything. I want both of you to update your predictions. I'm going to update mine, and then everybody watching this, make your predictions now. They're not locked in. You can change them all of the time. Your predictions do factor into Gold Derby's official odds, which are tracked and watched by the studios. All of this is a dynamic race, and so it's incumbent and important upon all of us to keep those studio chiefs terrified of us. And we're going to pick this up again in a couple of weeks and see where the Derby stands then. Okay?
Thanks. Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Alicia.
Thanks, Keith.
Welcome.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you.